In my last video, I discussed why I thought Wilson Fisk was the best MCU villain and what made him such a great antagonist. Well, in this video, I want to talk about a villain I think completely failed and might be one of the worst villains put on the silver screen, Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. Originally, these two videos began as one video, as I am of the opinion Wilson Fisk and Lex Luthor are highly similar characters, in that both characters operate mostly in one city, use the facade of a legitimate business to conduct their criminal activities, whilst Lex Luthor's plans are more world-dominated focused, and Wilson Fisk is more concentrated on New York. Both are still highly similar characters. Both characters have a superior intellect and are master strategists. They are supposed to hold so much power that they are basically untouchable from the law. I mean, both characters ascend to a political position of power, despite being tracked by superheroes at every point. Lex became the president, even though the Justice League knows he is crooked, and Wilson Fisk became mayor of New York, and Daredevil was on his tail the entire time. But this didn't matter to either character due to being master strategists and having so much corrupt power. However, the characterization of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor does not mirror the comics Lex Luthor at all, to be honest. Whilst I was open to Jesse Eisenberg taking on the role and thought the character would be brought more into the modern era with a Mark Zuckerberg X5, Eisenberg's Lex is played off mostly as a petulant child, with little plans or ideas and seems disconnected from reality. So in this video I'm going to talk about the reasons Lex failed as a villain, but before I get into that, please may I ask you please subscribe if you are enjoying my content. The button's right down there and it really helps the channel out, and if you don't want to subscribe, please just do leave a like. Okay, on with the video. Whilst I do think Batman vs Superman does do some work in establishing Lex's motivation, it is never properly fleshed out due to the film juggling so many other aspects. Lex in the comics' motivation is hating Superman is basically envy. Luthor is a man who has mastered nearly every type of science, built a multinational company bigger than small countries, and engaged in charitable activities to a greater degree than most people will ever able to. He's established an incredible legacy and earned a spot as a respected and adored figure in the mind of humanity. Essentially, Luthor becomes motivated to succeed by his own ego and sees himself as better than everyone else due to his extraordinary achievements. Then along comes Superman, a man who can do the most incredible things without breaking a sweat. And the part that really hurts Luthor is the admiration the city of Metropolis has for Superman. Despite Luthor's incredible achievements as a mortal, a literal god comes along and completely usurps Luthor as the beloved person in Metropolis. His simplest action overshadows efforts that have taken Lex months or years. His existence invalidates all of Lex's achievements. More, he invalidates all human achievement. What of humanity when God walks the earth? The point of Superman being a possible danger is not massively explored in the comics, but I think it is an interesting addition to add to Lex for this film. But Lex's motivations usually come from being jealous of the admiration there is for Superman, and Lex feels forgotten. But what is Lex's motivations in Batman vs Superman? What is the overall aim? Well, we never actually understand what Lex wants. If he kills Superman, then what? Is his motivation based on killing Superman? Lex becomes admired once again by a city who shunned him? But that couldn't be the case, as Lex seems very nonchalant about human life, as he releases a literal uncontrollable monster on the city, which would have resulted in mass deaths. He also invites Darkseid to come down to the planet. The problem with Lex in the film is the film never properly sets up his aims and motivations. Without it, the audience can't understand or connect with the villain. I said in my previous video, the best villains have a philosophy which directly conflicts to our hero, and actually is the reason our protagonist grows and changes. What does Lex show Superman? Nothing. Lex doesn't actually seem to care too much about the destruction in Metropolis. Lex only really mentions it in a way to turn others against Superman and manipulate those around him, like Batman, the dude who lost his legs and the Senator. So being filled with vengeance for what Superman did in Metropolis isn't his motivation, and again Lex's plan makes little to no sense, that you don't understand his actual end goal. We just know he wants Superman dead, but what's motivating him to kill Superman? I want to focus on an aspect of Lex's plan which I think really does show why Lex is a terrible villain, whose aspiration, motivation and aims are not clear. If we conclude that Lex's only aim is to kill Superman, then fine. It's a rubbish aim for a villain to have, but it's the only one we got. We see Lex's plan come to fruition over the course of this film, but here is my question. Why did Lex need Batman to kill Superman? A great villain comes from conflict between our protagonist and antagonist. The best hero-villain dynamic either comes from something philosophical, or perhaps the character is the complete antithesis of our hero. Usually a villain shows a hero a part of them that isn't so perfect, and that whilst they may think they are doing good, they have done a lot of bad. Lex and Batman are introduced to us in this film, and it is also pretty clear Luthor and Batman have had no past dealings before. This is, as far as the audience knows, the first time Luthor has gone bad. He has no prior history of Batman for him to have a rivalry with him. There's no conflict set up between Batman and Luthor. This could have been set up and it didn't even need to be in a flashback. X-Men 1 sets everything up we need to know in one brief encounter between Magneto and Professor X.
What are you doing here? Why do you ask questions to which you already know the answers?
Don't give up on the Merrick.
What would you have me do, Charles? I've heard these arguments before.
It was a long time ago. Mankind has evolved since then.
From this one encounter, we understand these two characters have met before and have a clash of ideologies, which will be the main focal point of the film. It's a simple scene, but it's highly effective. Now, needing Batman to defeat Superman could work if Luthor had something else planned the whole time, and our hero's confrontation was simply a distraction for the real plan, but it isn't. Sure, Luthor is building Doomsday, but as he says, that is plan B if Batman failed. Everything Luthor does serves his goal of defeating Superman. However, whilst we have fairly flimsy information on why Luthor wants to defeat Superman, why does he need Batman? Why is he the key to put an end to Superman? A man who is described as a god against a man in a batsuit. Luthor's plan took the better part of a year to put in place, as we are led to believe, so from day one Luthor identified Batman as the key to pulling off this plan. But why? The major problem I have is Luthor is not utilised as a villain, instead he is a plot device for the film's title to happen. Other than that, Lex is a character who just floats on through the film. Without him having a rivalry between him and Batman, I wonder why I should care he is manipulating him. Instead, what would have worked is if Luthor had wanted rid of both of them, due to Batman foiling many of Luthor's past schemes, and once Superman dispatches a Batman, set a controlled Doomsday on him, and there you have it, problem solved. Or you could have a scene between Bruce Wayne and Luthor at the party, and they could get into a conversation about Superman, discussing how they do not trust him. Luthor can then see this as an opportunity to get rid of Superman. And after he works out Bruce Wayne's secret identity, from there he can show him the kryptonite in order for him to do his bidding and dispose of Superman. It's a way of Luthor to not get his hands dirty, instead of hiring mercenaries which could definitely be tracked back to him. Lex isn't intimidating at all in this film. Now firstly, he is not physically intimidating, which isn't a major problem for a villain. Plenty of successful villains cannot be physically intimidating. Just look at the Joker and Harvey Dent. However, as I pointed out in my previous video, Fisk's intimidation comes from his power he has over the police, his strategy and superior intellect. During this whole film, Lex never shows to possess any real power or persuasion over people. The only real power he appears to have is a highly successful business, but he does not appear to know how to utilise his wealth in order to meet his needs, something Fisk was able to do. If you look back at when Wilson Fisk was arrested in season 1, it was an intimidating prospect, as you didn't know who he had on his payroll. He could escape at any point. You always felt Fisk still possessed some sort of control of the situation. Luthor doesn't appear to have any major influence over people in this universe. The Senator disagrees with him, and this Senator is weirded out by him. Luthor has to hire mercenaries to do his bidding, when compared to Fisk, who had the actual police on his side. A great intimidation factor villains can use is a sense of being undefeatable and having such a major control over the worlds our heroes inhabit. It appears an impossible task to overthrow the villain. I mean, in the comics, Lex Luthor ascends to the President of the United States, despite the Justice League attempting to stop him at every point. Lex has so much power and influence, he is still able to achieve his goal, despite the greatest hero in the world, Superman, at odds with him. However, Eisenberg's Lex seems like he is kind of looked down upon by people. They look at him disapprovingly at his party. Granted, he gave a maniacal speech, but still the art of a villain is either how they can control a room through their charm, or how they can take over a room through their insanity. This allows the audience to become intimidated by the villain, as they have such a hold on the situation, we are unsure of what will happen next, as they have total control. However, Lex is always fighting for control, and in the end seems panicked and lost. Without this, you can't become intimidated by Lex, and thus he becomes a very poor villain. So there you have it, there's just a few reasons why I thought Lex failed as a villain. For me, mostly it's his motivations and aims. We, the audience, do not understand what he wants. We kind of get it, he wants to kill Superman, but we don't understand what motivates him to do this and why we should be intimidated by him, and also what his end aim is. What does he want after Superman is gone? Does he want to get to a position of political power, or does he just want to go about in his business? It doesn't seem he wants either of these things, because he sets doomsday upon Batman and Superman, and he was easily traced back to him. And at that point he was thrown in prison and said to be insane, so there's not much coming back from that. I think it's a real shame this Lex didn't work, because I think Jesse Eisenberg is a good actor, and I think a different take on Lex could have really worked. It's just a shame he was just used as a stagnant character for us to get the title of the film, Batman vs Superman, actually to happen. But anyways, thank you for watching.